You know the saying, anything you can do, I can do better. Well, Arcadian here is saying to A Quiet Place, I can do better. And A Quiet Place is laughing back saying, I'm definitely doing it better. What's going on, guys? Thank you guys for clicking on this video. My name is Ryan, and today on the channel we're going to be talking about a horror film called Arcadian. Now this film, it is playing in theaters currently, but it will be coming to the Shudder streaming service at a later date. The film is directed by Benjamin Brewer, and I know that he's done one other film with Nicolas Cage before that I've never heard of, so this is my introduction to him as a director. The film stars Nicolas Cage, Jaeden Martell, and Maxwell Jenkins. And this film is about basically a near future world where everything is pretty much eradicated. You have Nicolas Cage, who has two twin boys. They live in this house, and at night they can't go out because there is these monsters that are attacking, very reminiscent of A Quiet Place. Now, going into this film, I saw a trailer for this film when I went to go check out the film Late Night with the Devil. I don't know the buzz for this film, but I think Nicolas Cage will be a big draw for this film. And anything Shudder, I'm going to check out in the theater if I get that said opportunity. Now, this film, the way that the lighting of this film is, it's very dark, and I think in certain aspects it helps the film, especially trying to build the mood. And obviously this is a decimated area or decimated part of the earth. I don't know if it's everywhere on the earth. They don't really explain that. You're not going to get that kind of background. We just know in this particular area and certain areas in the beginning of the film where he actually acquires these boys, because these boys are actually not his. He actually finds them in this rubble, and the earth is being decimated at that point. And they cut to 15 years later. They live in this field. There's a farm that's nearby, there's a forest that's nearby, and they're trying to gather supplies and do work during the day. And Nicolas Cage, his role in here, he's trying to teach these boys responsibility. He tells them that at night they need to come back and fast because you have these monsters that will come out at night. The creature design, I really did actually like them because they're very similar in a bear with their fur. Then they have this unique jawline in which they can make this clicking sound, and I was like, that's very unique. I thought they did a really good job of designing these monsters. They shield them away too. They don't reveal them too much, so you don't see too much within the monster, which creates that intrigue. They didn't feel like they really had that much power though, and I wasn't really sure if they were just kind of secluded in this area where they were at, or were they all over the earth. What really sets this film into motion is you have these two boys that go out during the day. They're looking for supplies. You have one boy who splits up. He's got a go-kart that he's riding around in. He drops his other brother off to this farm. He asks for supplies. He meets this girl and starts to fall in love with her. And then the other boy, he's going out and he's doing work and he's gathering things for the house. And he says to his brother, hey, I'm going to meet you before dark and we're going to go home. But then the brother goes from the farm, he's running through the forest, and he slips on a rock and he falls into this big old hole where the creatures are actually located at. Now, when he gets into this hole, Nicolas Cage gets really worried and he goes out and he goes to chase for his son and find out where he's at. He finds him in this cave, and during those scenes with this cave, I was like, this is pretty good. You know, it definitely had some intrigue with the monsters. It was dark. Nicolas Cage has this torch, so you have the fire that really lights it up within the film. And I was like, this is a very effective scene. Lighting of this film, I'm very mixed on. On one aspect, I understand that this needs to be a darker film because of just the nature of what this film is trying to accomplish. But at the same time, I was thinking while I'm in the theater and majority of this film is very darkly lit and hard to see certain scenes, I was thinking when this streams on Shudder and you watch this on your TV, if you don't have a TV that's really good with black levels, this is going to look very horrible on your TV, and you're going to have trouble actually seeing what's going on in points of this film. The other problem with this film, and I'm going to call it out every single time that I see it, the shaky cam. I do not understand in 2024 why we cannot have steady camera work. I completely understand if it's a found footage movie, it makes sense because it's a handheld camera. Completely understand that. But there are scenes in here where I felt they could really save themselves some trouble. The boys actually sitting at a dinner table and Nicolas Cage is in the middle of the frame. They have the camera shaking left to right like this. And I was thinking to myself, if you can't hold the camera actually steady, why not put it actually on a tripod, zoom the camera back? Because at that point, you don't really need to zoom in on their faces, which there are parts in here where I was like, I understand they're trying to capture the emotions of the characters, but you don't really need to zoom in on this part. So if I'm giving advice, as far as the cameraman here, please, if you cannot hold the camera steady, just put it down on a tripod. Help us all out, because there are parts in this film where I was like, it's just too much shaking back and forth. A lot of times, even with the monsters, I understand during times of turmoil, there may be a little bit of a shaky camera and you're trying to actually capture the shot in a way where it's like chaos and everything like that. I totally get that, but there are just too many scenes in this film where the camera is just shaking about, you can't see anything, and then add on that the lighting sucks, and it's like you have a really hard time really getting into the fact of this action. When there is certain action scenes and you see a little bit of the creature, I was like, okay, I like this shot, I like this shot. But then there's other parts too where I was like, I can't see a damn thing, so what is actually going on? I just know that there's actually chaos going on. Sound design for this film, I didn't really feel like it was very creative. I really felt like they were trying to copy A Quiet Place at times, having no sound whatsoever and very little of a soundtrack. Now, if you're a big fan of Nicolas Cage, I will also say that he is not much in this film, about 35 to 40 minutes. Then he disappears. He comes back later in the film. And I also felt like he was not actually right for this role, because Nicolas Cage, he always takes on these unique roles, or he has some crazy characters. I felt like he was just kind of meh in this film. I felt like they didn't really give him a lot to do, which obviously is not his fault, but I just felt like there were scenes in here where they actually show him showing the boys, and he's teaching them how to do work and everything like that. And, you know, he has his little rules and stuff like that. But I just didn't really picture him in a role like this. I felt like, even though he's been in horror films for Shudder in the past, I felt like this role was very tame for him. He didn't really have to do anything at times. The whole romance story with one of the brothers, I felt it was just so rushed. He really just meets her one time, falls in love with her, and all of a sudden she wants to join up with him. I was like, nah, this is not flying for me. You have to have a little bit more developing. And I think that also goes into the fact of the runtime, because again, this is only 90 minutes. And I feel like there's some parts in here where they really could have elaborated on a lot more. I felt like a lot of stuff that was actually presented, it's just kind of presented very quickly, and it doesn't really go much into it. And I think that's kind of where this film, it definitely fails in trying to actually elevate a story here, because on one end, it's interesting with the creatures. It's interesting where our characters are actually at. We don't know how they got to this point. We don't know exactly where the future actually lies, because this is one of those films that's a very hopeless film. And the ending of this film, in a way, it's anticlimactic in a way, because the way that it ends, and not spoiling the ending, I was just like, okay, so what do these characters do now at this point? The creatures also, are they still around? And even if they keep continuing on their journey as this whole situation unfolds, because obviously when it ends, we obviously don't know what happens, what is next for our characters? That's kind of where I was thinking with this film, because if they did a sequel for this film, which I don't think they will, where could they go from here? Could they do a prequel like A Quiet Place, which again, they would have to have more budget. But I felt like with this film, it just seemed like it was going the Quiet Place route, but really not really establishing what exactly happened to get to this point. But then the characters, they're very poorly developed at points. So you don't really have a lot to really grab onto with any of the characters. Emotionally, it was a little bit hard to really get into the characters. And I just felt like certain things, they just kind of happened to happen. And by the time the film actually wrapped up, I was like, nah, this film's okay, I guess. And it has a good central idea, but it just didn't really execute to the fullest to me. And again, that's probably because of the budget. So as far as the score for this film, I would give it a 2.5 out of 5. It's an okay film at best. It's one of those films that, you know, Quiet Place is coming up, so this is like a stepping stone to Quiet Place. Probably an okay watch, you know, to watch on Shudder if you're at home. But again, those black levels, it's going to be really tough, especially since Shudder, they actually stream on DVD format anyway. So it's going to be really tough. I'm very interested to see how people react to this film and if they like it, and if they have the same gripes as I do and how they feel about everything. So I'm very curious to see what people actually think about this film. But let me know in the comments, have you checked out this film? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Did you just think it was kind of meh? Are you going to check it out in theaters, or are you going to wait for it to come on Shudder, or are you going to skip it altogether? Leave any and all comments down below, and I will see you guys next time.